Welcome to the 1990 series. My name's Amanda O'Shea, the loving life coach from the Serendipity Experience. And I have with me today Dr. Giles P. Croft, who is today in Abergavenny, South Wales.
Well
How are you
pronounced.
doing, Giles?
I'm doing very well, thank you. We've
Good.
got a little bit of blue sky here, although the light's failing now.
A little bit of sky. Yeah, same here, really. It's getting dark these evenings, early, right? We've got those sort of early evenings. Abergavenny, then. How did you end up down there?
I was living in Swansea in South Wales. I'd moved there for work, and I used to race my bike a lot in Abergavenny. It's a big kind of like cycling community, and every time I drove down through this amazing rocky gorge that you have to drive down, I would think to myself, oh, imagine living there. Wouldn't it be awesome to live there? And eventually it happened.
Oh, that's lovely. So, Giles, you are my newest friend on the planet. Introduced via the Three Principles community.
Yeah,
that's what happened. So we connected, and it's really nice. And I'm looking forward to this call, getting to know you a bit more.
yeah.
So, Dr. Giles, would you like
Yes.
to introduce yourself and tell us a bit more about what you used to do, what you're doing now,
Yeah.
and how you've ended up in, if you like, in this community, mixing
Yeah.
with people like myself.
Yeah, well, it used to be Mr. Giles because I did my medical training, and then I qualified as a surgeon. I trained as a surgeon, so I went from being, it's all very confusing. I went from being a doctor to being a Mister, and now I guess because I'm not practicing as a surgeon anymore, but I'm still registered, so I'm back to being doctor again. And I left the NHS 16 years ago now, and went off to have various other career adventures. I always had a whole load of outside interests that I could see withering on the vine. I'd noticed that I was pretty much going to have to sell my soul to surgery if I was going to make a proper go of it. And I got to a natural crossroads in the process. I was eligible to apply for registrar positions, which was the sort of the last few years to consultanthood, and decided to do something else instead. And so I left the world of medicine. I kind of moved sideways. I worked in healthcare IT for a bit, but then I also mentioned I like riding my bike. I ended up working for a cycling magazine for a few years, which was amazing. I mean, that really was a dream come true. I got sent all over Europe to ride my bike and take pretty pictures and get paid for it. It was wonderful.
Yeah, what a huge change, isn't it, that you've had?
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah. So I was always fascinated. I did a psychology degree as well as part of my medical training, and I was always just fascinated with what made us tick,
Yeah.
and also that mind body connection, the way that our psychology affects our can affect physical symptoms. Because I remember very clearly when I was a medical student, I get eczema sometimes, and my eczema would always flare up around exam time. So the more stressed I was, the worse my eczema was. And I remember doing the first ever literature review project that I had to do as a medical student. I did on looking at the psychological effects of illness, and specifically, looking at dermatological conditions. And back then, this is like early 90s, there really wasn't very much in the research about it. And I remember feeling a bit scared that I was going to get kicked off the course for heresy. And whereas now I think we're all a lot more in tune with how stress affects our bodies. And there are so many medical conditions that are, if not caused by stress, then are certainly exacerbated by stress.
But
go on.
Do you believe that we understand where stress truly comes from?
Well, I think we misunderstand where stress comes from, and I think one of the reasons why the medical community has maybe not, while there's a lot more recognition about the role of stress in illness, there's not a great deal of work going on around it, because I think that people just genuinely believe, well, there's not really much we can do about stress, is there?
Sure. So it's like, well, my job's stressful, so what do you expect?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
That's
yeah,
how
yeah,
it is, or the world's stressful, or life's
yeah,
stressful.
yeah.
Giles, I've heard you talk about, or we mentioned talking about the downstream and upstream.
Yeah.
Would you tell us a bit more about that? And how?
Yeah, well, for me, the work that you and I do is very much upstream. It's looking, it's looking all the way. So, like in medical terms, you've got causes of illnesses and you've got symptoms of illnesses. And symptoms are very much downstream. Symptoms is how something manifests. It's what you get. It's the experience of it. And then if you look further upstream, then you've got the cause of that experience, how that is coming to pass, what is creating that experience. And I think that at the moment, the medical model is very much focused on treating the symptoms downstream without looking for the cause. And if we go back to the stress thing, then you could quite happily say, well, okay, so the cause of some of these illnesses is stress. So stress is upstream of symptoms. But the question I'm interested in is, well, what lies upstream of stress?
Yeah.
What's even further upstream? Where's that stress coming from? How does the experience of stress get created? And for me, and if you can get a grip on what is happening upstream, then everything downstream just kind of sorts itself out. Really,
It almost floats away, right? It kind of
absolutely, yeah,
it's
yeah.
dissipated. Giles, you've been involved with helping to get this understanding into the NHS,
Mm.
and so is that difficult? Has that been a
Well, yeah, it's early days, and I worked with a registrar in the NHS who was on the brink of burnout and was thinking about leaving. And when we worked on the upstream stuff about where that experience of burnout was coming from, she had a profound transformation. And so as a result, I got invited to her department, a very busy department in a big teaching hospital, to do some work there, to run some workshops, which was a real learning experience for me. And yeah, we saw some real results. We struggled a bit because the group of people that were it was just running in a lunchtime meeting, so the people that were coming in every week were different, so it was
right?
very difficult to have
Yeah.
any continuity. But then I also just had the honor of attending a 2-day event that was run by Amy Johnson up in Leeds,
Oh, great!
with
Yeah, I
with a
saw that.
department there.
Yeah,
And that was just having 2 full days to really slow down, because a lot of this is about slowing down. We're so caught up in our busy-minded thinking, constantly analyzing, and it's very much the medical way. It's a very intellectual pursuit,
sure.
and to be able to step back and and look at just how it's basically, it's the user manual for life, isn't it? It's how does life work, how's it being created moment to moment. It's just, there's such freedom in that.
It's amazing, and Amy Johnson's amazing, isn't she? To listen to. I'm really looking forward to the conference in America next May, and the addictions and recovery conference, the first 3 principles addictions and recovery conference in Minnesota in May, and run really inspired by Amy and Joe Bailey.
Yeah,
Joe Bailey, and I'm going to be over there. And one of the panels speaking. We're taking one of my clients actually with me also, and sharing and being around, those guys who are on the other side of the pond sharing this stuff. So
yeah,
it's not just something that quirky Dr. Giles has come up with, quirky Amanda. You know, it's not.
Yeah.
It's we're really seeing it now, right? It's
Yeah.
you know, I love that Rani's just brought out that, or the pamphlet that got
Yeah, the dealing with difficult thoughts and feelings pamphlet. Yeah, yeah.
Somerset, and you know, and it's in the schools now. I'm part of the iHeart, you know, as well, getting this understanding into the schools, part of that, and the prisons, and we're slowly seeing it run into the mainstream.
Yeah.
What do you think it is, you know, when you see people like you shared the understanding of how the mind works, or you shared how you see these principles behind our human experience, for example, with the registrar. So what is it that you see has been the most helpful thing for those people to see? Or can you give an example of the sort of insight that that somebody close to you has had, that might not be huge but has made a huge difference? That's for me what happens. Our insights don't have to be huge for there to be a huge difference.
Yeah. And I mean, what I find endlessly fascinating is, however many of us there are on the planet, 7.5 billion, there will be 7.5 billion versions of this. It's weird, isn't it, that it's a collective thing, in that we're all having the way that our experience is happening is exactly the same. We're all living in the feeling of thought taking form in the moment, and yet every single person you talk to who's had an insight about how their experience is being created is completely different, and often they actually struggle a little bit to put it into words.
Yeah, it's true. And you know, it's so true actually saying that, because sometimes sharing an insight loses some of its juice. Because what might be like, oh, I never saw it like that, or like, that's the first, like, that never occurred to me, or whatever it might be. And when we try and share that with somebody else, you know, and somebody else goes, oh, that's obvious. Like, I thought everyone knew that, you know. It can lose a little bit of its kind of, of its, you know, sometimes people say, oh, I want to, you know, I can't wait to tell you about what I saw. And I'm like, I don't know that I always need to hear it, you know, because I don't, you know, it's amazing that people have just they've seen something different. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter what the thing is, what the belief system or what the blind spot is, or it's the fact that they never saw it like that before.
And I love that. It's like, you know, you're sitting on one perch and you've got this particular view of life, and then in an instant, and it is in an instant, isn't it? You know, we talk about it being one thought away, and it is literally one thought away. It's like, oh, I'd never thought of it like that before. And from your perch that you were sat on, all of a sudden you're sitting on a different perch, and it means that whatever it was you were struggling with looks different, but so does everything else. So does everything else. No, your entire world changes when you have an insight, because you can it's like being able to see round corners all of a sudden, you know, because you've got this completely different perspective on it. And that's why I find it just so rewarding, you know, working in this sphere, helping people just to see things differently, so they can stop kind of like struggling, you know, grinding away at these problems, trying to change behavior, because this is what we do, isn't it? If we've got a habit that we want to change or something, we think, oh well, so I've got to do this by willpower, or I've really got to try and change it. And really, the way that change works is that we have an insight, we get a completely different perspective on the situation, and it simply no longer makes sense to carry on behaving the way that we used to behave. And that's how change works. And it's beautiful and it's effortless.
Yeah. And that is how, you know, lifetime changes work.
Yeah.
That's the difference, when it just doesn't make sense anymore, as opposed to, like you say, white knuckling or something, a change of a habit, you know. I love that, as you talk about sort of downstream and upstream, it is like It reminds me like I don't know, that there being a hole in a, hole in the wall or something, and so there's dripping water, and it's like we catch it with a bucket, and we can, we can get more buckets, and we can have a whole team of people, like a whole army of people changing the buckets, but it's sort of easier to go and fix the hole. Not fix the hole, but in that situation would be metaphorical. It would be easier to go and see, like, well, where's this water really coming from? Let's see, like, something's just fallen off, or something's moved, or something's shifted, or and because we see it, I see it anyway. It's not that we fix people. It's not that people need fixing. It's just that something's got in the way of their own common sense and wisdom kind of guiding them, or speaking to them. It's when we're caught up in that kind of thinking. I don't know how it looks to you, but yeah, we panic. Right, so we panic. So it's just like, get more buckets. Until somebody comes along and kind of goes, right, well, where's this coming from? I don't know, just get another bucket. And if somebody says, well, okay, you get the buckets, I'm going to go and and it's almost like, and then we get, I never thought of that. I never thought about seeing where the water's coming from. I never saw about, we're just busy downstream. We're just busy in the drama of downstream, and it feels often like we're in life, I think, that they are trudging upstream, like against the flow, right? Like there's a big trudge up there, and it seems like, for me, what this understanding does is kind of come along and bring a little ladder, lets people just kind of like just kind of like get on the top and get a different view, right? And then we see, oh yeah.
Well, and upstream, there's a fresh source. There's a fresh source of experience and thought and insights and ideas coming constantly. And this was a metaphor that Amy used the other day. It's like we take a scoop in a bucket out of this ever flowing river of thought that's fresh and new and just brings so much possibility. And yet what we do is we take a bucket out, and we sit and we look at it. We look at what's in the bucket, and we don't pay any attention to the fact that, moment to moment to moment to moment, it's all fresh. Like every single new moment is, in some ways, is disconnected from the last. It's like, it's a clean sheet. It's a fresh opportunity, and there's wisdom waiting to tap into at any time. And yet we're busy peering at this little thimble of experience that we've taken and said, well, no, this is the way it is. This can't change.
It's like the bucket of analyzation, right? It's like, and it gets stinky, and it gets stale, and in the end we end up throwing it back in anyway. We just throw it, eventually it occurs to us, like, to just, to move. Something nudges us to move on eventually. It's never permanent, it's always temporary. And I think what happens is we see that temporariness is less and less and less. Like what used to be, I heard somebody the other day talking about, they had a very story of depression, and they said what now might take them 2 days to get over used to take them took them years. And then eventually you see what took you 2 years might take you a day, and eventually it's like, but like you say, one thought, it can all just go, you're like, well, why would I sit there, that doesn't make sense for me to do that anymore. Like,
we still all have bad days, don't we? It's just knowing, for me, having seen how my experience has been created through thought, even when I'm like really, when I'm not seeing it, and I'm I'm in a really bad mood, I just know it's gonna pass. And the only real sort of control, if you like, that I have over it, is the only thing I can ever do really is make it worse.
Yeah.
You know,
Stir it up.
by kind of like hanging on to it and, oh, why is this happening, and how am I going to fix this, and
Yeah.
just letting it blow on through. And like you say, something in the past where I might have been stuck in a particular way of thinking, or stuck with a particular problem for months or weeks or something, it just blows through so much quicker because I'm willing to let it
And
not hang on to it.
that's the power of water. Metaphorically, is it's so powerful. We can't stop the river, right? The river flows, you know.
Absolutely.
Yet the power of thought is also so it's super powerful when we don't understand how it works, and it can not always serve us so well. But there is something about understanding how your thinking system works that just helps us to use it in a way that makes we can have a softer, gentler, more graceful
Yeah.
experience of anything. And that's been super helpful for me. And for me, it gives me such hope and such and so much excitement that people like you are out there sharing this in in the medical world, where
Yeah.
it would be
Oh,
super.
it's this. I mean, the implications for medicine are just are enormous, because there are just so many physical conditions downstream
Yeah.
of that stress response that we all seem to live in these days, and we've just kind of taken it for granted. And most of us don't even know how stressed we are, because we've just got used to it. We've got used to that, all that busyness going on up here,
Yeah.
and we don't realize what it's doing to us. So I'm incredibly hopeful for the future,
Oh,
of medicine. I really am.
me too. And I'm really glad that our paths crossed. I'm really glad that had to have this conversation,
Me
and
too.
many more to come. So
Yeah.
thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Giles P. Croft. And I look forward to you sharing with us what what's happening in the NHS, and
Yeah.
how we can how any of us can help with sharing this message and sharing this understanding with those who are just out there struggling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for inviting me to the conversation. It's been a pleasure to meet properly.
And thank you for being in the 50s of the 90
Yeah,
stories.
and good
So,
luck with the rest of them.
I know. Here we go. It's a countdown.
Yeah.
Lots of love to you, and
All right, to you too.
thank you everybody for listening, and I hope you enjoyed and heard something that was helpful. Thank you all. Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.